Welcome to Ottawa, Canada. I'm here in the nation's capital of Canada for the weekend. And today I want to talk to you about the purpose of life. It sounds like a very grand theme, but we're going to go through my model of the 0-hour work week and kind of relate that to the purpose of life. Now, just to summarize, my 0-hour work week is really a two-part model of living, if you want to call it that. It's a philosophy of living. It says, part one, you achieve early financial freedom. Part two, you become all you can be. I've talked a lot about education and culture. That in many ways is a value judgment, but the theme of that is really become all you can be, right? So become all you can be is the catchphrase I'm using for education and culture. Now, in Ottawa, I find something very fascinating, which is a kind of person that is kind of the opposite of the Silicon Valley type. So in Silicon Valley, you have this guy called Chamath Palihapitiya, and he is a venture capitalist. So I want him to be door A, and I want the people I met in Ottawa to be door B. And the thing about Ottawa that's really fascinating is everybody I've met here, practically, with a few exceptions, works for the government. That's the government in the back, that's the Canadian Parliament. And I find that really fascinating as a life choice. So yesterday I was with a guy, we'll just call him Rohit, not his real name. And Rohit is maybe early 60s, and he wants to work until he's 70 for the government and then retire. And I'm thinking to myself, you want to work until you're 70? Like, I just honestly don't understand that, and it really it goes against everything I talk about in my model of the 0-hour work week. So that's door A. Now let's talk about door B, which is Chamath Palihapitiya. So Chamath was, I kind of relate to him in some ways. The big difference with him and I is he's a billionaire and I'm not. But he came to Canada when he was 5 years old. I came to Canada when I was 5 years old. He's actually Sri Lankan. I was born in India. He went to college in Canada. He went to Waterloo. I went to McGill. He eventually moved. His first job was in derivatives. My first job on Wall Street was in derivatives. The difference between he and I is I stayed in derivatives. He went to Silicon Valley, and he was one of the first 100 employees at Facebook. And that's where he made his first billion, because he was part of the Facebook IPO. I apologize if there's some noise. It's fairly early, but I'm by a big road here in front of the Parliament building. So if you ask Chamath what is his vision of life, he actually is very similar to my 0-hour workweek model, in that I talk about, and at the same time different, right? So my model is really about the power of compounding, and it's a slow way to wealth. So 20 years or less, achieve financial freedom by accumulating strips of cash flow, and once you're financially independent, which is defined as perpetual passive cash flow, that's multiples of cash outflow, then go into part two and be all you can be, right? That's the concept. So in his case, he didn't do the first part the way I talk about it. He actually went into venture capital, which is the exact opposite of what I'm talking about, which is an interesting digression into the fact that there's many ways to invest. There's many ways to participate in the capitalist system and achieve early financial freedom. I come from a tradition of derivatives arbitrage, which means low risk, building on the power of compounding. He comes from the tradition of all-in risk, get a portfolio of high-tech investments, hope that one is such a success it pays for all the losers in your portfolio. Totally different way of achieving financial freedom, but just as legitimate. There's many ways of achieving financial freedom. There's a Warren Buffett way, which is maybe a time horizon of 40 years, where you pick what's called a value investment. There's my derivatives arbitrage way, there's a venture capital way, and there's probably this technical analysis, this fundamental analysis. There's a lot of different ways. I don't want to give you the impression mine is the only way. But my way is really the slow way, compounding, 20 years or less. I think he became a billionaire in his early 20s, which is perfectly legitimate. Now, what's interesting about Paul Petit and me, that's another similarity, is I look at the world and I see a bunch of problems. And I say, look, these problems need to be solved, right? And that's really the kind of your purpose of your life, not in an egotistical way, but there's just a lot of problems that need to be solved. And so he and I are similar. Our interests are slightly different. He comes at it more from a technology point of view. But I look at it in terms of something that's really influenced by Jeffrey Sachs's book, The End of Poverty, which we've talked about on this channel before, which is that 6 out of 7 people in the world live on $5 a day or less. So if you're living in the West, for example, you're already part of the top 7th of the world, right? You don't think about that. Almost 1 billion people live on $1 a day, 40% of the people live on $2 a day. And the problem I want to solve is I want to help poor people build wealth, because I think it's almost like a mathematical formula. It's very doable, right? Now, when I say wealth, I mean perpetual passive cash flow that's multiples of cash outflow. I don't mean be a billionaire. I don't know how to be a billionaire. I'm not a billionaire. Chamantha is, I'm not. So I can't teach you that. But I think you can teach everybody how to achieve early financial independence. And if somebody is living on $1 a day or $2 a day, I think that's very valuable. And what strikes me is it's a two-sided coin. You have 7 billion people, 6 billion of which live on $5 a day or less. You can see them as liabilities, you can see them as assets. They're actually assets. Why is that? It's because if you train them and you educate them, you can turn them into cash flow vehicles, right? And not only cash flow vehicles, but cash flow is a side effect of solving big problems in the world, right? So my problem, as I illustrated, is that poverty issue, and I use, along with my wife, incentives. So we have an endowment, and what it does is it feeds midday meals to rural kids in West Bengal, India. Now, why? Because the object is, or the goal is, if you incentivize someone to show up at school for the meal, they'll be exposed to education, and a certain percentage of them will get struck by the fire of curiosity, get educated, and change the trajectory of their life and probably generations after. That's the concept, right? That's my way of doing that problem. But what strikes me about the people in Ottawa is there's no vision. Like, you can shoot me in the head before I'd work for the government. Seriously, right? Like, I just don't understand that. Work until 70 in the government? Have you no sense of the fact there's problems out there? Have you no sense of the fact that what keeps you from really tackling those problems in the way that you want to tackle them, in the way that you want to articulate what problem you want to solve, is that you're not financially independent? I mean, it just boggles my mind. I mean, you want to shuffle pieces of paper? I mean, again, I have that Wall Street perspective. I really do believe people who are winners go to Wall Street, people who are losers go to government, and I really have that belief now. Is it a stupid belief? I can certainly see the argument that it's a dumb idea, in the sense that I'm sure there are some people who are Ivy League educated, capable of going maybe to Wall Street and choose to go to the government because they have a sense of public service or something like that. I just don't buy it. It's my premise. My premise could be wrong. I'm open to that. So you have all these, in my opinion, and I'm probably insulting the people, and I apologize for that. But I'm a very direct person. I say it the way it is. It's probably why I'm not terribly popular. I'm disagreeable. But we need disagreeable people because they tell the truth. And so I think I'm telling the truth, and it's a complete waste of resources, right, in my view. I mean, I can't think of anything more brain dead than working for the government. What you're doing is you're subjecting yourself to this pathetic middle class life where you have enough to be comfortable, but you don't have the financial freedom to really swing for the fences and be all you can be and solve the world's great problem. The other thing is, I really believe, again, it's my bias, that government is a friction cost, right? Instead of creating progress, you have all these fat cat bureaucrats with their lifetime job security and their fat pensions and their great health care, and they just shuffle pieces of paper around, and they come in the morning to ask themselves, how do I justify my job by creating rules that increases the cost of capital so that there's less job creation and less innovation. That's the way I look at it. I don't think that's what they do consciously, but that is in effect what happens, right? So that's why I'm taping in front of this building. It's the embodiment to me of comfort. And I think the point of life is to get outside of your comfort zone. So when Rohit told me over a drink last night that he wants to work until he's 70, I mean, the question I had is, have you no vision, man? I mean, like aren't there problems that you think need to be solved? Now, that's okay. Look, I'm not, I met a friend, John, works for the government. I met a person called Tom, who works for the government or did work for the government. A lot of fine people work for the government here. But it's what you do in Ottawa. There's no sense of, I want to change the world. There's problems to be solved. And what boggles my mind is early financial freedom is not on their list of things they want to do, right? And when they do retire, which is a form of financial freedom, they hang on Ottawa. At least that's what I've seen. There's this person I know that used to work for the nuclear energy agency here. And what does he do? He sits around in his big ass house. He's retired. Retired, I guess, fairly early. And he just sits around in his house. Why? Because of the health care. Because he's a little older now. Maybe he has some health issues. I think his son has some health issues. And he just sits around his house. He wants the health care. So you have this freezing dark place full of people seeking comfort. And he just wants to hang out. And that's fine. Look, I am giving you a value judgment. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying that I don't respect it. And that's not part of the vision I communicate in this channel. So the uptake is this. You can change the world. But to change the world, you have to achieve financial freedom, which means financial independence. There's a way you can do that. I talk about it in this channel. The derivatives arbitrage perspective is not to take capital risk. And one of the reasons you don't take capital risks in my model is you have 20 years at the max. And you can only go through so many market cycles in that 20 years. And when you go through a market cycle, you sacrifice years of compounding. I've talked about how in the year 2000 there was a market crash in technology. NASDAQ went down 75%. That's 7, 8, 9 years to get your dollar back, which is 7, 8, 9 years of non-compounding. 2008 market crash. I think it was, if I remember correctly, 8 years to get your, I could have the number wrong, but 8 years to get your dollar back. 8 years of compounding completely being blown out. So if you have a 20-year time horizon, you really can't afford to have giant periods of years where there's no compounding. Now, if you have a 40-year horizon, it's different. But in my model, it's early financial freedom. So when you see a building like this, when you see a government building, I want you to think about the trade-offs these people have made. These people have chosen comfort, and they've chosen the giant barbecue in the backyard. They've chosen working until there's nothing left in you, and competing with the Joneses or the Mukherjees, depending on your ethnic background, having the cottage, having the 2 cars, having 6-week vacations, and that's okay. I get it. But what I want you to what I want you to think about is that there are conscious choices. Those choices have consequences. And you need to think about the big picture. So you go back to my favorite kicking horse, Sanjay. He has 2 daughters, and the daughters are doing fine. One is graduated in computer science, I think works for Google. The other has an MBA, works in a bank in New York. They're going to do just fine. But guess what my friend Sanjay wants to do? He wants to leave his money to his kids. Now, the people who need that money the least are his kids. His kids are going to do fine. They're part of the 1/7 in the world. There's so many problems to be solved, and Sanjay wants to leave his money to his kids. Whereas he could create a legacy that helps thousands of people. I mean, I want you to think about the fact that right now, this is early August 2025, there's this famine going on in South Sudan. And I can't even imagine what that's like to be in a famine. I mean, if I don't have my Red Bull in the morning, I get in a bad mood. If I miss one meal, I'm an animal. I cannot imagine what it's like to be in a famine. It just blows my mind. But there are things you can do. I actually, in my derivatives days, created a product. I had a team with me, but I was the main driver of this product that basically offset droughts in Ethiopia, and basically paid out when there was a drought, so you counteract a famine caused by droughts, right? At least that was something that had an impact. Now, what my friend Sanjay is saying is he wants to leave his money to his kids. He's not going to solve problems like that. Screw the people dying of famine, let's leave our money to our kids. And I think Sanjay is like a lot of people in this world, right? That's what they want to do. And it just boggles my mind because there's problems that need to be solved. Okay, to sum up, what have we said? So what I've said is, you sit back, have a cigar, and you think once in a while about what the purpose of life is. And if you think seeking comfort is a choice you want to make by working in a government building like this, that's a choice you're going to make. That's fine. It's not for me to create a value judgment. But I want you to understand that there's trade-offs you're making. If you go into the government, you have to wait a certain amount of time until you retire. And almost none of them stop at that early point. They keep on going. Why? Because the pension is a lot less than they would like. And they don't have that vision we talk about of go to Bali, go to India, go to Malaysia, go to Vietnam, go to Cambodia, and take that early retirement and live out there. Versus living in an expensive place like Canada, 15% VAT, which is like their sales tax, high cost of living, high taxes. You could retire early, move out there, but they choose not to do that. And that's fine, but I'm not sure a lot of people think through the consequences of their choices. And like that person I was talking about, a nuclear engineer that used to work in the nuclear energy part of Canada, I don't know, he made his choices and he sits around all day. I just don't understand the point of his life story. So you have a life story, you have an interesting story. I mentioned and interviewed different people, Nick, and I'll tell you about Garrett someday. Interesting people I've met along my way. And they all have a life story, but that life story has a purpose to it. And my challenge to you is to ask yourself, what is the purpose to your life? And do you want to seek safety? Leave your financial assets to a bunch of brats who don't need it? Okay, maybe your kids aren't brats, but a lot of my friends, their kids are brats. And then pop off? Is that it? This is the story? Or do you want to really rock the world a little bit? Do you want to achieve early financial independence and swing for the fences and do really creative kind of things? Like Chamath is trying to tackle huge problems. How do you reduce the cost of capital so that through technology, taking out the middleman so that people get early access to capital, businesses can start, individuals can buy homes earlier, etc., etc. So it's your choice. What is the purpose of your life? Think about it. And with that, I'll leave you from Ottawa, Canada.